You look at NVIDIA's stock price, then you hear about climate policy, and then there's a new military strategy. It can all feel like these random, chaotic events happening all at once. But what if I told you there's a hidden architecture? A common toolkit that leaders around the globe use to make sense of it all? Well, today we're going to pull back the curtain on that exact framework. Okay, so let's just dive right in. We're living in a world that is just constantly changing. Markets go up and down, brand new technologies pop up overnight, and geopolitical tensions can just ignite without any warning. So, how in the world does anyone, from a CEO to a central banker, make these huge, critical calls when the ground is literally shifting under their feet? Well, the answer, it turns out, is this really powerful approach called structured analytics. You can think of it as the secret weapon for modern decision making. And it's all built on four key pillars that we're going to walk through. That's forecasting, optimization, simulation, and risk analysis. This framework, this is the connective tissue that links all those crazy global headlines together. First up, forecasting. Now, this is not about staring into some crystal ball. It's about using hard data to try and anticipate what's coming next. Future trends, big challenges, and new opportunities, whether you're running a company or, an entire country. Let's take NVIDIA, a complete titan in the tech world. They use forecasting all the time to project their earnings. But, their models can't just be about sales figures. They have to factor in these massive external variables, like geopolitical headwinds coming from China, which can totally change the entire game for their performance. Now let's zoom out to the national level. You've got Japan's economy, and it's contracting. So its leaders are using these same kinds of forecasting models to try and figure out why their stimulus policies aren't hitting the mark. You've got a weak yen, imported inflation. It's a super complicated picture, and it just shows you how tough this can be. And of course, this stuff goes global. China is going through its longest post-COVID slowdown in consumer spending, so analysts everywhere are trying to forecast what those ripple effects are going to be. Because when Chinese consumers tighten their belts, it sends shockwaves through global supply chains, and that affects businesses everywhere, from Europe to the US. So, you have your forecast. Now what do? Well, that's where our next tool comes in, optimization. This is all about making the absolute best choices you can with the resources you have so you can build resilience and hit your goals. Now, what's so fascinating here is you have two retail giants, Target and Walmart, both optimizing for the exact same goal, market survival, but in completely different ways. Target is pouring money into its digital game, meeting new consumer habits. Walmart, they're doubling down on what they do best, affordability. Both are totally valid strategies, just optimized for their specific slice of the market. And it's not just companies. Governments are doing this all the time. U.S. trade policy is a perfect example of optimization. By strategically tweaking tariffs, like with the new deal with Switzerland, the government is basically saying, okay, we'll accept some potential cost increases in the short term, but why would they do that? Because they're playing the long game, optimizing for long-term affordability and benefits for you, the American consumer. And maybe the single biggest optimization challenge of our lifetime is climate change. You hear the UN Secretary General call it an imperative, but for the world leaders at summits like COP30, the real work is this massive optimization puzzle. I mean, how do you allocate limited funds? How do you balance economic growth with protecting the environment? It's a gigantic puzzle with the entire planet at stake. Okay, so if optimization is about picking the best road, our third tool, simulation, is kind of like creating a map of every possible road and where it leads before you even take a single step. And check out this quote, "We are fighting phantom inflation." That's from Fed Governor Stephen Murant, and it perfectly captures the high-stakes world of economic simulation. The Fed runs these incredibly complex models to decide on interest rates. Murant is arguing their models are seeing a ghost, an illusion of inflation, that's leading them to keep policy way too tight. And that right there is the big trap with simulations. Your model is only as good as the data you put into it. Garbage in, garbage out, right? In this case, the argument is that using outdated numbers for things like housing costs is a flawed input, and flawed inputs lead to flawed outputs. In this case, economic policy that can actually be hurting more than it's helping. All right, so we've got our final tool in the kit, risk analysis. Once you've done your forecasting, your optimizing, and your simulating, you've got to look at all the wild cards, the threats and the unexpected opportunities that could just change everything. I mean, just look at IBM's incredible journey in quantum computing. This is the definition of long-term risk analysis. They started investing way back in the 1970s, a huge bet on a technology that was decades away. Now, with a target for major breakthroughs by 2029, that massive, calculated risk might just pay off and end up transforming our world even more than AI. And speaking of AI, the risk analysis is happening right now, in real time. On one side, you have big investors calling it a transformative supercycle, just a huge wave of opportunity. On the other side, you've got firms like Vista Equity pumping the brakes, warning about a speculative bubble. It's the same exact trend, but you've got two totally different reads on the risk. But risk analysis isn't just about money. Sometimes it's about survival. You've got Army Secretary Dan Driscoll giving this stark warning about unregulated drones and flying IEDs, basically weaponized commercial drones. He's framing this as a potential existential threat, and that has kicked off an urgent risk analysis across our entire national security system to figure out how to defend against it.
And believe me, this risk landscape is just huge. It means analyzing the incredible opportunities and potential failures of tech leaps like Blue Origin's booster landing. It requires navigating the political risks that come from deep partisan divides, and it means weighing these incredibly complex geopolitical risks, like the global fallout from deciding what to do with frozen Russian assets.
Okay, so we've walked through these four big tools. But the real magic, the true analytics edge, is seeing how they all lock together, how they form that connective tissue, that hidden architecture we talked about right at the start. Let's put it all together. Forecasting, that's the invisible thread connecting a tech company's stock in California to a national economy in Asia. Optimization, that's the logic connecting Walmart's pricing strategy to global climate policy. They're both about making calculated trade-offs for a long-term goal. Simulation, that helps us understand the intense debate happening inside the Federal Reserve. And risk analysis, that ties the AI boom directly to the scary new threat of drone warfare. You see, it's all connected. And that really brings us to our final thought here. We've seen just how powerful this analytical toolkit is. It's shaping our economy, our technology, our security, but it leaves us with one really critical question. In a world that relies so heavily on this hidden architecture, what happens when it's built on a faulty foundation? What's the real price we pay when the model is flawed, the data is biased, or the simulation is just plain wrong?